Okay, so let's take a look. Today I'm going to be working questions 5 through 8 from our notes. Questions 5 and 6, it says identify linear or exponential patterns from tables. So we talked about our homework yesterday that if I kept on adding or subtracting the same thing, we call that linear. If I kept on multiplying or dividing by the same thing, we call that exponential. So I'm going to be looking at number 5. I'm going to start at my 0 value. So you guys see how it's a table of X and Y values. I start on my 0 value. So I start here. I see my value here. It is 0.5. I'm going to check if it is linear. So linear means I keep on adding the same thing. So I'm going to go down. I'm going to go down. In order for 5 to become -4, I have to subtract 1. So I'm gonna say I have to subtract 1 and I have to subtract 1. Yeah, 5 minus 1 is 4, 4 minus 1 is 3, 3 minus 1 is 2. Seems like I keep on adding or subtracting. Now, some of you might be wondering, what about the other way? Because coming down, I was subtracting 1. But if I go up, it seems like I'm adding 1. And yes, when you're going one direction, you do one operation, right? You add or subtract. When you go the other way, you do the opposite. So notice that when I was going down, I was subtracting 1. When I'm going up, I'm adding 1. So be careful on that, okay? When you're going down is one operation. When you're going up is the opposite. Now this one, I'm going to call linear. Right? Because I keep on adding or subtracting the same thing. It is true that the sign changes. Sometimes I did plus and sometimes I did minus because I was going different directions. Emphasis on that. When you're going down is one operation. When you're going up is the opposite. Let's take a look at here, number 6. I'm going to check if it is linear. I'm going to start at my 0 value. So my point here, the value of y is 2. So I'm going to see, in order for 2 to become 1, I have to subtract 1, right? Because 2 minus 1 is 1. Then I check. 1 minus 1, 0 0.5. I don't think so. 0 0.5 minus 1, 0 0.25. I don't think so. So it is not linear. Okay. So in this case, it must be exponential. But let me check. For 2 to become 1, I have to divide by 2, right? Because 2 divided by 2 is 1. Now 1 divided by 2. Notice I'm going down. So I'm going dividing. Okay. 0 0.5 divided by 2. I type it on my calculator to double check. It works. So it seems like I'm dividing by 2. Now let me see if it works the other way as well. Remember, coming down was dividing by 2. So going up will be the opposite operation. That means I'm going to multiply by 2. And I check. 2 times 2 is 4. Yep. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. I keep on multiplying or dividing by the same thing. So I'm going to call this exponential. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful. If you're going down is one operation. If you're going up is the opposite operation. Notice how the values that I was looking at, the values that I was focusing on were my Y values. It is true my X values are there, but I do notice that my X values change. So it's fine. They change by 1, so it's not a big deal. Now, another thing you guys are going to see in your homework is I'm going to ask you for the pattern. What is the pattern shown in the table? So basically, if I'm adding or subtracting, you got to tell me, what am I adding? What am I subtracting? Okay, so let's take a look. When I start at the point 0, 0 1/3, you might be like, I don't want to deal with fractions. Okay, so let's avoid fractions if possible. In that case, I'm going to start at this other point. Let me check if it is linear. All right, in order for 1 to become 3, I have to go plus 2. In order for 3 to become 9, let me check if it's plus 2 as well. No, it does not. It does not work. So it is not linear, right? Adding or subtracting did not work. Okay, let's see. What if it is exponential then? For 1 to become 3, I have to multiply by 3. And then I multiply by 3 again, and it works. Then how about the way back? When I was going down, it was multiplication. So going up is division. I divide by 3. Okay. 1 divided by 3 is 1/3. Yep. 1/3 divided by 3 is 1/9. Yeah. 1/9 divided by 3 is 127, and so on and so forth. So it does work. It is exponential. However, here is not asking me, is it linear or exponential? Here is asking me, what is the pattern? Now, very tricky over here. Some of you might be like, how do I know if it's multiplying or dividing? Well, the operation that makes you go down. What were you doing when you were going down? That's the pattern. That's the pattern we're going to be looking at. What were you at what were you doing when you were going down? In our case, we were multiplying by 3. I see on our figure dividing by 3, but that's when we were going up. Going down, it was multiplying by 3. So my answer will be multiplied. On your homework, you guys are going to have a drag table. I mean, a table that you guys are going to choose multiplied. And then I'm going to put a space right now. You're going to have to type in the number. So I'm going to say multiplied 3. I know in English that this one doesn't quite make much sense. Multiply 3. We usually say multiply by 3. But what I really want is two things. I want to know if you know whether you're adding, multiplying, subtracting, dividing. So I want you to choose multiplied, and then tell me by what. What are you adding? What are you subtracting? What are you multiplying? What are you dividing? So in this case, we multiply 3. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Let's take a look at number 8. Again, I always like to do linear, so to see if adding works, but I'm looking at they are fractions. So I'm like, oh man, I don't want to deal with fractions. So I'm gonna be looking at here. To be honest, let me skip the fractions. I'm like, I don't want to deal with fractions. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna see for 1 to become 4, I will have to add 3. Good. Well, how about the other way? Do I subtract 3? Does it work? Yeah, it does work. So this is actually, I'm going to say, remember what I'm asking is what happened when you were going down? So I'm going to choose add. I was adding, and then my other answer, I'm going to write here it says I was adding 3. However, I was not adding 3 for every square, right? Remember how I skipped a few steps, how I skipped a few questions? I was adding 3 every 2 steps. You see that? See how in the X value I went down 2, or basically every 2 steps? I was adding 3 every 2 steps, so we're going to call this 3 over 2. And then you guys will have to type that in, 3 diagonal 2. I was adding 3 every 2 steps. Now that is actually a slope. It is fine. 3 over 2. Remember how when you guys graphed lines, slope was a fraction? So it's fine. It's fine for a slope to be a fraction. I was adding 3 every 2 steps. Nice. Now you guys should be able to do that homework.